Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is subtract. Let's take a look at some definitions or ways to use this verb. The first way you might hear the verb subtract is to mean to take away a number or an amount from another number or amount in order to calculate the difference. Now, as I describe this, your mind might have been going to the subject of math, and that's great. That's exactly what this definition is connected to, the operation of subtraction. Another word that sometimes gets used in a similar way is deduct. Second meaning for the verb subtract is to take away something, and this something is a part. And we're taking it away from the whole of something, okay? And we're doing that in order to decrease the size, the number, or amount. You should know that subtract is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, we're going to add ing to form subtracting. The verb subtract ends in a T sound, and we're going to make the past and participle forms by adding ed. Since this verb ends in a T sound, the ed is going to make an id sound. Subtracted, subtracted. Now let's take a look at some phrasal verbs with subtract. And there's actually just one phrasal verb that we're going to look at today, and that's subtract from. It can have a couple different meanings. We'll look at each one individually and an example sentence. The first meaning for subtract from is just to remove. Here's an example sentence. They will subtract it from our bill. So perhaps there is a charge on our bill that we dispute. We don't think it's right. We ask about it and say, don't worry, we'll subtract it from your bill. We'll remove it. Another meaning for subtract from is to diminish or detract from something. So when I think of diminish, I think of the quality of something or the performance kind of going down. It's not as strong, not as positive. This has a negative meaning to it. Let's look at an example sentence. The star player's absence subtracted from the team's performance. So in this sentence, the star player, for whatever reason, isn't able to play in the game. And as a result, the overall performance was worse. It went down. And that's the idea of diminish. Finally, if we mention we are subtracting someone from or subtracting something from, again, that larger group, again, this goes back to this idea of we are removing someone or we're removing something. Maybe removing a number from a group or some sort of larger thing. Let's look at an example sentence. If we subtract distant cousins from the guest list, then we'll have about 100 people to invite. So in this example sentence, perhaps we have people who are planning a wedding, and they don't want too big or too large of a wedding. So what they're suggesting, as they wrote down names of who to invite, is maybe we remove this particular group of people, distant cousins, our second cousins, third cousins, etc. Then we'll only have 100 people remaining to invite. Okay? Now let's continue practicing our verb of the day, subtract. Today we'll practice the verb tenses, the simple present, present progressive, and the present perfect. Let's start with present perfect. We'll start with simple present. I'm too excited. For the simple present, we're using this verb tense to talk about habits and routines. We might also use it to describe a fact. In the simple present, particularly the affirmative, we're going to use the base verb just as it is if our subject is I, you, we, or they. If our subject is he, she, or it, we need to add an S to this verb, and you're going to see that in this example sentence. The game subtracts a point if you draw the purple card. So this might connect to the idea of a fact. Whatever the game is, you're removing, we're reducing an amount because we have drawn a particular card. Now let's look at a negative sentence. To make negative in the simple present, we're going to use do not in the base verb or does not in the base verb. Here is an example. He doesn't subtract people from his life over differences in opinions. So here we're going back to that idea of removing. If I want to make a yes or no question in the simple present, I'm going to start with do or does. Then I'll have my subject and then the base verb. Do they subtract recoveries from the number of cases? This is a question I've actually heard a few times during the ongoing pandemic as people look at statistics and other information that is being shared on a variety of platforms and through a variety of organizations. Next, let's take a look at the present progressive. We're using this verb tense to talk about something that is happening now or something that is in progress. To make this verb tense, we're going to use a present form of be, that's am, is, or are, and then we're going to use that ing form of the verb. Let's look at an affirmative example. These children are subtracting 3-digit numbers from 4-digit numbers. Okay? So what the children are doing right now. If I want to make a negative present progressive sentence, I'm going to insert not after my be verb. Here's an example of that. Her success isn't subtracting from others' achievements. And this sentence, I would say, goes back to the second phrasal verb we looked at with the meaning of diminish or detract from. So what the sentence is suggesting, we can all be successful. We can all have achievements. And one person's achievements don't reduce the impact of someone else's achievements. The last thing we're going to look at in the present progressive is our yes or no question. To form this, we'll start with a present form of be, then we'll have our subject, and then the ing form of the verb. Is that subtracting from their performance? And here, that isn't really specific, but it might be a certain behavior. And again, this connects back to that meaning of diminish. Now, let's take a look at the present perfect. We can use this verb tense to talk about something that started in the past and continues into the present, or we could use it to talk about something that has been completed in the past, but we don't know when. So sometimes we'll refer to that as the indefinite past tense. To make the present perfect, we need two parts. We're going to use have or has, depending on our subject, and then we'll use that ed form of the verb. Let's look at an example sentence. The high school has subtracted the usual athletics fee due to the pandemic. Think again about reducing or even removing the fee here. In hopes that more people will be able to participate. If I want to make a negative present perfect sentence, I'm going to insert not after have or has. Let's look at the example. They haven't subtracted the costs yet. So here, an action that hasn't been done but is expected to be. If Finally, if I want to make a yes or no question in the present perfect, I'll start with have or has, then I'll have my subject, and then that ed form of the verb. Has the county subtracted hundreds of test results from its website? Again, this is something I saw related to the pandemic and how we're collecting and maintaining data regarding COVID-19 cases. Finally, let's take a look at some words that are related to our verb subtract. And the first is the noun form. You heard me mention this word, I think, towards the beginning of the video. Subtraction is just the noun form of our word. It can have a couple different meanings. It could be the process or skill of taking one number or amount from another. So again, I would think of this as sort of the mathematics operation with this. So let's look at an example of this usage. We'll use subtraction to solve this word problem. A second way to think about the noun subtraction is just any act or instance of subtracting. So again, we can think back to our verb meanings about removing, diminishing, or detracting from, taking away. All of those can apply here. So let's take a look at an example sentence with this particular meaning. The students' grades improved after the subtraction of some after-school activities. So in this instance, the idea of removing maybe too many extracurricular activities. So the student didn't have time to study or do his or her homework. So once those were removed, now the grades improve. The last word we're going to look at today is an adjective. It's subtractive. I don't know that this is a word you'll hear all that often, but I do want to point out the adjective form of our verb of the day. And this adjective just means tending to subtract or diminish. So again, it's connecting back to the earlier meanings we've discussed. Now let's look at an example of this in a sentence. Was the makeup subtractive from the actor's performance? So did perhaps this actor's makeup, the way they physically looked, did it take away, did it diminish the overall performance? Perhaps the makeup looked ridiculous. It was a really good actor, but their appearance distracted people. And this is a question. Did it impact the overall experience in a negative way? Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.